shelter is still full, even as the weather is warming and the rains are subsiding. So the goal is to make sure that there's as much stability for homeless individuals as possible. Obviously, there's a greater need. Obviously, there's a need for new housing that's affordable and achievable for people of very low income. But we were asked to bring this forward so that the board could have an opportunity to consider extending the shelter. I know it's very important to our chair, it's very important to our board of supervisors as a whole, and I know there are challenges with the surrounding business community. And as a county in establishing the contract for the winter warming shelter, we heard that input, we expanded security, we made sure that the facility itself would really be complementary to the community, not a detraction, and we're proud of how it has been working.
And to establish it, I understand it takes some partnership with the city of Salinas. Moving forward, do you think that there will still be that partnership, or will it be more?
We hope there's partnership, although the city has expressed more partnership on the long-term solutions. It would be ideal if there's partnership, but our board at this point is considering just sustaining it out of the county's discretionary fund.
And the big kind of looming question over everyone right now is the budget, and the challenges with that. It sounds like that's going to be a conversation today about, maintaining these services and how to do that.
I do expect that the budget and the costs will come up as an issue. The county budget, budget hearings will be on June 4th and 5th, is a very complicated budget with a lot of very devastating cuts to our community. And I do hope that the community listens to those budget hearings, and for those who have opinions that they speak, because the Board of Supervisors needs to hear from the community as they make decisions around very difficult issues.
But ultimately it sounds like it's about the well-being of the people that are living there, are residing in the shelter now, and can you speak a little to the risk or what happens if this shelter does end or close at the end of this month?
Well, the short answer is if the shelter closes, we'll have 65 individuals, including 16 children, who are living on the street again. That puts the children at risk, that puts the seniors there at risk, that puts the families at risk. And we know those people are individuals who are seeking shelter, who want to be off the street. And that's a really important consideration. And as a community, we need to pay attention to that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
And,
we're now moving to our scheduled items. We're going to start with item 9.2. This is to consider approving and authorizing the Director of Department of Social Services to negotiate and execute an agreement with Community Homeless Services to keep our temporary shelter open, and also includes several other items, B, C, and D. So, Mr. Elliott, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. In front of you today is to consider approving the Department of Social Services to negotiate and execute an agreement with Community Homeless Solutions for $380,810 and an additional $3,254 for fire and refuse services to extend the operation of the Salinas Homeless Shelter for the period of June 1st through October 31st. We would anticipate after October 31st, when the inclement weather season begins, that we would again be considering a full winter warming shelter concept. So this only takes us up to the period of inclement weather. We also ask that you consider approving and authorizing the Director of Social Services to sign up to 3 future amendments to the agreement where the total does not exceed 10% of the original contract amount and doesn't significantly alter the scope of work. We also need appropriations, so we ask that you consider authorizing the Auditor-Controller to increase appropriations in the current year, fiscal year 17-18 budget by $76,842 using funds from one of the options that I'll discuss in a little bit. And also we ask that you consider authorizing the additional appropriations for the 2018-19 budget in the amount of $307,222, again using the funding from one of the options that I'll discuss it. As you know, the winter warming shelter has been in operation at 111 West Alisal since December.
since we had a late start. The shelter's been operating at capacity, and even as we entered the month of May, it's been up near capacity on average. So the average at the beginning part of the month was that there were 65 individuals utilizing the shelter. That includes 34 men, 15 women, and 16 children. And as of last night, the shelter occupancy was a total of 59 individuals, including 10 children. If the shelter were to close, all those individuals would be back out on the street, which is a very difficult situation for individuals who are without housing, but who are seeking shelter. And so, given that concern, we thought it was important to bring this agenda item to your board as soon as possible. We do continue the discussions and the planning around the permanent homeless shelter, currently aimed at 1220 Natividad Road, although, as you heard earlier this morning, there are some other options that are being contemplated, but at this point, we're moving full forward with the City of Salinas to relocate the shelter. Certainly as soon as a permanent option is developed, or if an alternative temporary option is developed, that would also be on the table. In terms of the children, we also have been working with our partners at the Housing Resource Center to make referrals to the CalWorks Housing Support Program so that families could be housed. However, as you also heard this morning, there is a very big challenge in identifying very, very low-income housing that would be available for those families using the CalWorks Housing Support Program. That program is a temporary solution. It provides 6 months worth of housing, extendable for another 6 months, but the families have to be ready to take over the rent on their own. So it's not just a permanent subsidy program. In terms of options for funding, we present two options. Option one is a combination of transfer current year contingencies in the amount of $76,842 from the general fund contingencies, and then for the fiscal year 2018-19 funding, use $307,222 from the cannabis tax revenue. Currently, there's $428,526 of unallocated contingencies. If that option is chosen, that would leave a balance of $351,684 in contingencies for fiscal year 17-18. And for cannabis revenues, $3.1 million was collected in 16-17, and $7.4 million is estimated for fiscal year 17-18, for a total of $10.5 million estimated by year end. Of this amount, $737,000 has already been committed for current year needs, and the recommended budget utilizes an additional $5.4 million to fund one-time needs next fiscal year, leaving an estimated year-end balance of $4.4 million unallocated. Second option to consider is to transfer the full amount, $384,064, from the cannabis tax revenue. With that, I am open to take any questions you may have.
Maybe we'll take some questions. We'd like to hear, just get an update about how the shelter has run since December from Mr. Reyes Bonilla from Community Housing Solutions and Jesse Armenta. If they would like to come and elaborate give a report how the shelter has worked since it opened. And then we'll open it for questions for both you and Mr. Robinson.
Supervisor Lynn, we would be glad to report. Since opening December 1st to just current up to beginning of May, we've seen 285 individuals that have come unduplicated through the warming shelter. And its effectiveness, the ultimate goal is to help these individuals gain access to housing. Again, as Elliot said, it's not easy, but we're committed to help the families that we have currently in the shelter. We have 6 families with 12 kids. So we want to work diligently as Community Homeless Solutions with the other partners to get them into some type of housing immediately if it was to end next Thursday at the 31st. So the decision is going to be an important one. I know it's not going to be an easy one, but as an agency, 5 years ago we committed to serving Monterey County in this capacity through the warming shelter. So we got our work cut out, and I know that the Department of Social Services and other agencies have been helping us to be effective and help these families transition to a better tomorrow. So I thank you for bringing this up for a vote. I know that it's going to take everyone to make that vote. I hope that today that we're able to extend it so that it gives us more time to do what we need to do in order to get these families into housing.
Mr. Armenta.
Thank you. My name is Jesus Armenta. I'm the shelter manager for the Salinas Homeless Shelter that we're speaking about. I know stats have been provided to you, and just recently put together some numbers that we've provided over 9,000 bed days, if you will. We've received over 302 new clients that have actually come into the system. We have had a significant increase in the number of families. And I think I'd like to just speak about the families and some of the individuals. The families that we have there now are good people. They're struggling. Some of them are working. Some of them are trying to find employment. And they're very grateful to have shelter over their head for themselves and their children. One family in particular has 4 children. And he works out in the fields. He arrived recently and very grateful. He even brings in water and so forth donated. He's very grateful for having a roof over his head for his children. We have another family there right now that has 3 children. Some of the members or some of the families are here, and individuals are going to speak to the services we provide at the shelter. It's been a real privilege for me to be able to work and serving the homeless. They don't have a voice per se unless we step up. And I think this is a great opportunity as a community that we consider supporting the extension of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Armenta, can you just elaborate the size of the building? Is it, because when I visited, it's large enough that you're able to give different folks their own spaces within the building, women on this side, men on this side, and families, they can have their own space, and it seemed like the clients really appreciated having some kind of privacy in this type of a shelter.
Yes, as you may recall, last year we were operating at 20 West Market Street, and essentially we had one big open area and about 3 or 4 areas that we used for family rooms. We're very blessed this year to have what was formerly the Public Defenders County Monterey modular building. It lends itself very well to accommodating the homeless, providing them with some privacy. There are 26 rooms in the facility. We have individuals that come in there up to 2 or 3 people in a room. We have 6 dedicated family rooms, in addition to 4 more that we can open to provide the families their own privacy when they stay overnight. So the building itself has worked very well for us, and we appreciate the County Monterey support in making that possible.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. So now we'll open it for questions from the Board of Supervisors for either Mr. Bonilla, Armenta, or Mr. Robinson. Let's start with the Supervisor Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, I'm getting the sense that the City of Salinas doesn't want to continue shelter operations at this particular location. Do we have an indication as to where the city would support a shelter?
There's been discussions, and I might defer to our administrative officer, Rahman, regarding perhaps locating a temporary shelter. In other words, bringing up modulars in the Laurel Yard area. I think there's also been discussions about repurposing the health center in Chinatown. Challenges with those 2 options. One is, the cost of bringing in modulars is steeper than using an existing modular. The other challenge of bringing families into Chinatown has its own obvious challenges given the level of crime and difficult relationships in the Chinatown area. So those are the two options I'm aware of, Dr. Baumann. I don't know if you're aware of any other ones that I have not been part of the conversation.
Mr. Robinson has basically summarized the key alternatives. Basically looked at it four. One of them would be the existing unit across the street here. The other would be to go to 1220 and try to utilize that existing structure. It's very old, it's very small, it would require significant investment. We don't think it would have adequate capacity. As Mr. Robinson indicated, Chinatown, but it does present problems, particularly for families and children. And then we look conceptually at Laurel Yard. There's significant acreage in front of our existing public works building there, and it would be relatively straightforward to replicate a facility similar to what we have across the street, and that would give us, many years to build a permanent facility and recognize state funding and other alternatives to build ultimately what would be a homeless facility that would serve this community for decades ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next question. I noticed that the county budget staff didn't have a chance to review this report before it was posted. I wonder if we could hear from budget staff about their thoughts regarding the financing options. And I have kind of two prongs to that. One is I'm a little concerned that we're already allocating money in the new year, whereas we haven't had our budget hearings yet. So is there a way that we could fund this through the end of this fiscal year and pick up the part for the new fiscal year as part of the budget discussion process? And then the other question just is sort of related to that if we do take action today and we allocate cannabis revenue to fund this contract in the new year, how does that affect assumptions that have been or are being proposed for the draft recommended budget for next year?
I don't see the finance staff here right now. I don't know if they're listening around their way, but I'll just say one thing about, establishing a contract in the future year without funding. That obviously will put all the other programs at risk in social services if it does not get funded through the budget process. So it's important for the department that we are secure that the financing will be there to operate the program, so we don't have to dig deeper into programs like Child Protective Services or Adult Protective Services.
Thank you. Just one more question then. So if we do extend this contract through the end of October, do we have reason to believe that there will be SB2 funds available that will help to fund the services through the winter?
My hope is that there are a number of elements both between SB2 and even in the Governor's May revise that would help fund homeless services, and so that's certainly an option we would look at to offset costs if and when that becomes available. I don't have a secure answer for that, but I would lean towards financing options will become available. But at this point, I think we would need to make the local commitment.
Mm-hmm. And so just following up on that, then that if we were to fund this through the end of October using cannabis or wherever we would get money to do that, if other state funding came available after the state adopts its budget or through some other mechanism, then we could revisit that allocation possibly?
That's correct.
Thanks.
And just to elaborate on your question, Supervisor Parker, because the open public comments will start with Mayor Gunter on this issue, because we did have a meeting last week, Supervisor Phillips and I, and working with some of our business community. Any option to move to another location is not going to happen by the end of next week. So this plan allows us for 5 months to be able to extend the existing shelter. But But the issue is, how do we raise the money to bring a new modular unit, connect the sewer, connect the water? Even if we have this site at, originally Supervisor Salinas and I were looking to do a veterans affordable housing project on that site. But because there's interest now to perhaps use the 1220 and do some economic development there that could then perhaps fund the future shelter, that's why they're promising, because we need to explore every new source of revenue. So this 3 or 4 acre site on 885 East Laurel is big enough where perhaps on a corner of it, we might be able to put a modular unit so that when we do get the financing together for the permanent shelter with transitional housing on top, it could be designed and constructed in a way where the homeless modular unit could continue to serve the community and not interfere with the construction being built around it, So I think there's a way, that's what we're exploring. But I think even to put a modular unit is going to cost, I think, $1.2 million. So, well, I don't know if you have any newer numbers, $2 million, So even to move that, it's going to take some fundraising, and we've been talking to Dan Baldwin at the Community Foundation. We're talking to private businesses, a partnership perhaps with the city and the county to do that, but it's not cheap, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time to raise the money and get it there. But we're having those discussions, but we're hoping that this will create the incentive. Let's have a safety net for now, but it also creates incentive to have our private partners help us fundraise. The sooner we can raise the money, the sooner we can move and get that modular at 885 set up.
So it's 885?
885, East Laurel.
Okay, so not 855.
I think it's 850.
Oh, is it 855?
855, okay, thank you.
So listening to all this conversation, it seems to me that we really aren't ready for much of anything. So I haven't heard public comment, which I'm looking forward to hearing. But it sounds to me that one of the approaches we might consider taking is simply fund for one more month the shelter on its current location for I think that would be the 76,842. Take that out of cannabis so that the rest of the project can go in with the other budgeted items that we're going to have to be looking at. Give us a little bit of breathing time to work additionally with the city and see if there's some way we could come to some kind of an agreement, and then have the opportunity to pursue the other items the other opportunities that we have. But I feel like, just from what I've heard so far, we're not in any kind of a position to make any sort of a long-term recommendation.
I mean, the only thing that I'd add is that the more stability you give our providers, the more successful they can be. So, from having, a layoff notice on Thursday to now a layoff notice extended a month that had, I think causes some stress for the shelter staff. That would be my only input there.
Thank you. Okay, Supervisor Phillips and Salinas.
Well, Normie, in all the years past that I know of, hasn't the Normie shelter closed down in the end of April?
That's correct.
So this would be the first time we're extending.
That's correct.
And when we say we're going to October, then that starts the cold season. So in essence, if we don't come up with anything else, we've created a permanent shelter there, at least a year-round shelter.
Yeah, year-round would be the terminology I use, because we're still moving, full speed ahead at relocating to a permanent site that has more services, more facility, and yeah.
But we'll be funding this entirely by the county, because the city said no more.
That's correct, although we would also look at whatever state funding becomes available through the state budget process.
And I know Supervisor Naleo and I met with the Downtown Merchants Association and the City of Salinas about the 855 East Laurel, and you weren't there, but Manny Morales was. But did you know that if we look to move and bring a modular there, that the City of Salinas said they would support it, that the business community said they would support it. Dan Baldwin I talked to, who I think you talked to, Supervisor Leo, said he would support it financially and help have a special fundraising to support it.
Yes, I am aware of that, although part of it is just the continuity of operations is part of the purpose for bringing this forward. And if this shelter's or this contract would be for the services, so it should be possible to
take that contract and work with EME Homeless Solutions to relocate the services.
Okay. I'm just concerned about, in years past, we haven't worked well with the city of Salinas, and I think we've started doing that. And I gotta say, I'm a little concerned about losing the partnership when we had a commitment with them working on it. And frankly, looking at the East Laurel site, and I've been out there a number of times, and I know what it takes to move a modular in, because we did one at a ranch I ran. I think if we cut through and have the red tape cut by the city of Salinas to work with us, I think you could have a pad done and ready in 2 months.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is something I think that's also a new phenomenon which points to our housing crisis that we have with so many children. There, before I knew when we closed down in April, it was mostly adults that were in those emergency shelters. And my concern certainly is at the end of May, if it were shut down, the children would be out on the street. That's a reality that this community has to confront. My concern would be that before we even contemplate shutting down this shelter, that we have some reason, or maybe even force that partnership to continue with the city so that we have an alternative emergency center. I mean, fortunately, that's the new reality that we're dealing with here, and you know, somebody has to be willing to force those discussions and that partnership to be able to, come up with an alternative. I would be hard pressed right now to say let's shut it down in May or even in October when we've had this opportunity. So I would just suggest that we all come together and not. It is not a whether shut it down or have it. We've got to come up with an alternative solution to this, and I would hope that after public comment we can get to some type of understanding of that we're not going to put the children out of this.
And my hope would be that this action would not, interfere with our partnership with the city of Salinas around the development of a permanent shelter, but it would solve that problem exactly that you're pointing out, Supervisor.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, but wasn't it true that when the Tamsi shelter originally closed, didn't we extend contract services with Dorothy's Place and Victory Mission for expansion of services until we opened this last winter shelter?
That is correct.
So we have stepped up in the past when there was a gap. The other question is, because people make this assumption, oh, summer's coming around, somehow people could be out on the street. But doesn't it also get cold? Don't we get drizzle? Don't we get strong cold winds? Don't temperatures regularly drop here in Monterey Bay 40, 50 degrees at night, even during the summer and early fall months?
That is correct. And I'd also add that the streets is no place to raise a child.
Exactly, and that's why I always have to count that assumption, because it was drizzle yesterday and today, and just a few days ago it was really windy, and many nights during the week is very cold, and I don't think any of us with kids or families or seniors would put ourselves or our families in those harsh climates in the evening and early morning hours. And I want to just address the letter from the City of Salinas, because I worked a lot with Mary Gunter, and I believe our relationship from where we're at the closing of the Tammy shelter today, we've really built a lot of good working relationships, and we want that to continue. Their letter did state that they're still with us on working on the permanent site, an alternative site, so that opportunity is still on the table per their letter. But I do want to point out that and we'll probably hear some of it today, that there's, when it comes to the poor, and I've heard it in the past, to our homeless residents, our most vulnerable residents, our children, it's really easy to overgeneralize and to demonize our poorest residents in our community. I want to just, for the record, state that the people staying at our shelter are in a lot of different situations. There's some who are chronically homeless, there's some who are seniors, there's some who are veterans, there's some who are children. There's some, in some places, because the rent's got jacked up, that they're out on the street temporarily because they cannot longer afford to pay the rent, or the deposits got raised, and so they're left in a crisis mode and they need a place to stay until they can get resituated. So our homeless population are in a lot of different situations, and I hope that people do not overgeneralize. I hear problems about one problem, one issue, and then they make that the case, they paint a broad brush for everybody who are homeless in our community. But number one, as I said, I think we need to maintain this safety net for these children. Today there was 12, I think there's been up to 20, 21 kids at different points since we've been open, a large number of children. And you talk to them, anybody, I encourage people to go visit. and you're able to see a very well-run shelter. We have this main area in the middle. Somebody donated a large screen TV. Everybody's watching TV. It's quiet. It's peaceful. Women who want to sleep and have their privacy, they're doing that. So do the men. But when you also go to visit the families, and they got the private room with 2 or 3 kids. Most of the children are from the age of 8 to 12 years old. Anybody with the heart and compassion, and I think with care that we grew up with, our values we grew up with, hey, we have to, as a community, take care of the people that are being able to utilize the service, that would have nowhere else to go if this shelter was not there. So I'm with this proposal, I want to just have us have the safety net, and our providers need to have some kind of, and their employees need to have some longevity. I don't think 1 month gives anybody any reassurance, because we all know, as stated, it takes $2 million to raise the money to bring a new modular, and it takes time to do the connections and everything else that comes up with setting up a new shelter elsewhere in the city. I'm open to that concept, and I've been very open to doing that, but it does take time, and it takes resources. And so far, the only people who have stepped up to pay anything have been the city and the county. We were the only local government that paid out of our discretionary dollars. So it really showed that we're putting our resources where our words are. So I hope that we could approve this. It's only 5 months, but it does really create the incentive for any other stakeholders and partners to help us raise the money. And the sooner we raise it, the sooner we can move it. And once we have the shelter there, it makes sense, because to do the long-term shelter, the way the Salinas City Council unanimously approved, and the way this Board of Supervisors unanimously approved that high-end and expanded project, it does take several years to put the financing and the tax credits to get that, and the state funds to be able to get that off the ground. So I just hope my colleagues would join us in extending this for at least another 5 months.
Mr. Chair, if I can just add something to what you were saying. One of the observations and generalities that people have about the population of people who are homeless is that they bring lots of trash. And one of the things that we did different this year is we had the opportunity to put the dumpsters behind the security fence. And just an observation I have, it's qualitative, not research-based, but that oftentimes other people in the population, people working, people with means, take advantage of people who are struggling by doing things like bringing their trash there. And so far this year, we have not had community complaints. We certainly listened to the input we heard from the business community. We added security, we added a privacy fence, but almost most importantly, we made it so that the dumpster wasn't accessible for by people who were not using the shelter. And it's made a big difference, and it's really, I think, gone a long way to help at least objectively addressing that concern and that generalization, which is so inappropriate.
And like I said, I encourage people to stop by at all times during the day. There isn't loitering, there isn't the articles being collected around the shelter. It's right across Congressman Jimmy Panetta's office, and he's also visited the shelter. So, and the security has been, I think, important too. It's 24-hour. When that shelter is open, you have the security there the whole time. So we've received 0 complaints to the county regarding the shelter since it opened. So I think that's something to really stand on. With that, we'll open it up for public comments now. And we have a whole bunch of speaker cards. So we're going to try to, we got at least 15. So I'm going to try to limit public comments to 2 minutes, except for our mayor here. Mayor Giovanni, thank you for being here, and thank you for your work with us on trying to deal with these ever-growing homelessness issues.
Thank you, Supervisors. Thank you, Chair. Last fall, when we agreed to move the warming shelter to the Public Defender's Office, I believe it was unanimous from this Board of Supervisors that we close on May the 31st, because we were all going to work diligently to find a new place that would be safer, better, and it would open up that parking lot. And everybody said, just a parking lot. Well, we went to the judges, and they said that would be awesome. We went down to the train station where we're busing people in, probably spending $300,000 a year, transporting people to the courthouse. And I'm thinking, wow, that would sure be a good down payment on opening up our shelter on Laurel Drive that Supervisor Phillips has talked about. So and I can tell you this, there's no one on my city council that dislikes the homeless, wants them to disappear. We have taken this responsibility on for over 5 years, making sure we've taken care of the homeless in our community. Sometimes, not always at the best, sometimes they've slept on City Hall lawn. Thank you, Mr. White. Appreciate your support on that issue.
You might just come back.
Could be. So, but I can see now that we haven't stepped up enough. And I think we should all be ashamed of ourselves, myself included. There should not be children in that warming shelter. We should have made arrangements through voucher programs, through any kind of housing, to place them into some kind of housing. There shouldn't be a child warming there. That's not what that was open for. I agree with Supervisor Phillips. We need to move forward and we need to open the shelter on Natividad Road. We promised the business community, and I can guarantee you all of this, that if we'd have opened this next to Macy's in Monterey, we'd have a shelter built. We built a bridge to Big Sur in record time. They said that was going to take 5 years. I think it was 8 months. So if we can't get a couple of trailers moved to Natividad Road in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we've obviously failed the homeless people that are here today that are going to speak. We need to take care of them, and the county needs to. And I think the real reason they should be out in Natividad Road is not to make them go away, but to provide social services. We need the health department to come over there and provide services to them, probation, the hospital's there. We can provide the service because it's there. Now, we're basically storing them overnight, and then we let them flee during the day. I've spoken to the Methodist Church. They're willing to go out there and help provide food and services if we move them to Natividad Road. And as you know, we caught a lot of grief about providing them with housing money to put a new kitchen in. They're all in helping us clean up downtown and make this a better proposition. And if we're going to help these folks, we in the city of Salinas have stepped up. There's going to be a 90-unit facility on Soledad Street, housing for folks that have no place to live, so they don't have to sleep in doorways. We're working harder with our service center to make sure those bathrooms are open. We have the Homeless Coalition that I believe gets $2 million a year. I mean, we can come up with the money if we really dig deep and decide if these folks are important or not. And I think it's up to you. I know that 4 of you have announced, some people that I know, that you're all in and going to vote for this, and that's fine. That's your responsibility. It's your money. And I appreciate all the marijuana folks here today because they're going to generate some revenue because obviously it's going to get spent. So I think we need to look at this realistically and step it up and move forward and stop dragging our feet. Thank you.
My name is Doug Dunn. I'm here in Salinas, California. I'm a Monterey County resident. I have a vested interest along with Wes White. We've been at this for a while. You guys moved that temporary shelter from across the street, City Hall, the Tampy building. Now we're at the Public Defender's Office. When is this going to stop, you know? You promised us 1 year to build a permanent shelter. Now it's 2 years, now it's 3 years. There's measures, the ballot measures being passed in the city of county. Measure E ballot. There's $5 million in cash reserves in that bank account. Why not use that money? You have the pot industry now, the cannabis industry, you know, growing dope, growing marijuana. Get some of that money, guys. I'm an activist, I'm an advocate for the homeless and the poor. And I have a vested interest in this issue. And I care, I'm a Salinas resident, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a homeowner. I care about women, children, men, veterans, single mothers, single fathers, the disabled, the drug addicted, the alcohol addicted, the gambling addicted, don't matter, they're homeless. Every day I drive to San Jose, and where I see in the streets, in the hours of darkness, people walking around, no place to go. Salinas City Hall, 40 degrees, 4 o'clock, guarantee it was wind blowing, it's cold as hell. I tried Chinatown, 3 days on a hunger strike. It's freezing cold down there. Try to sleep on the concrete, in the dirt, in the mud, in the rain. You can't, it's impossible. I tried it, it doesn't work. We need a temporary homeless shelter until the permanent one's built. That's a discussion. We have the funding, we have the money, let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kevin Dayton, Government Affairs Director for the Salinas City Center Improvement Association. As you would probably guess, it's fraught with pitfalls to be representing commercial interests and to come up before an elected board to talk about homelessness. Usually when this is happening with SCCIA, the social media starts churning about the business people who don't care about the children and the seniors. A lot of it actually comes from Supervisor Adams' district. And I look at that and I say, you know what, at least we have the courage to come up here and say the truth is that, yes, there are children and families and homeless people who are responsible people. There's also a problem with homeless people who do drugs, hassle people, go to the bathroom on the street, and those are people who are in the downtown area. As long as the downtown area is considered to be the place to put the homeless, that is going to interfere with the City of Salinas' downtown vibrancy plan and the effort that I'm involved with to see if we can turn downtown from an area that was struggling into a vibrant place. I'd like you to have some courage. Somebody needs to say or ask the question, is this shelter going to be here for years to come in the 111 Alisal Street? I would say the answer is almost certainly yes, because there's nothing going out for bid, there's no plans in the works really to move it, and this is just delaying until the future, a delay for the future. And the truth is, at the rate things are going, this is a perpetual, permanent shelter for years to come until a vision of a $40 to $70 million permanent shelter is built. I would like you to address this firsthand and say, you know what, let's be honest with the people. Our plan here, we really can't do anything else besides keeping this shelter downtown. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Joel Panzer, resident and business owner downtown, and I'm opposed to basically changing this from a winter warming shelter to a permanent shelter. What I'm hearing from the dais today is that there's no solution in the immediate future. So is this going to be what we're going to have to live with for the next 2 years? I mean, it's just intolerable downtown. My wife got accosted last week. We show up to work, there are people defecating in front of our doorway, in the parking garage. At the recreation, you talk about children at the recreation center and the library, we've got all sorts of problems with people. And whether it's the homeless center with people that are turned out during the day and they've got nothing to do, or at the Methodist church, we're depriving our youth of being able to use a recreation center uncosted. The same thing with the library. It's, you know, from a planning perspective, it's just an incompatible land use. Who puts a homeless shelter right in the heart of the downtown area? If there were any area of the county unincorporated that were somebody proposed to put this type of facility, Monterey County would require a use permit. I think the city of Salinas should require a conditional use permit. So a lot of the issues that are associated with this facility could adequately be addressed. So as I see it, it's all good and well to get people in a shelter overnight for the security purposes that are outlined, but what happens is in the morning, they're turned out. You know, somebody had said, maybe Mr. Robinson, the street is no place to raise children. That's what's happening from 8 a.m. or whenever they're asked to leave till the evening hours. They're out on the street, and it causes problems to the business owners. The Salinas City Center does have security. They generate daily reports. This is just a sample of reporting from December when the shelter opened, but there's a ton of reports. And I'm going to leave this with the clerk of the board because it gives you a sense of what happens in our business community during the day when these individuals just, there's no oversight and there's no proper care for them during the day, and that's what's causing the problem. So I'm 100% opposed to any extension. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to ask if you can extend the time where the warm shelter of the shelter that is a home for about 65 adults and 16 children. Along with my family, I prepare and deliver bananas once a month to the homeland. It saddens my heart to see people with no home, especially children.
Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you for your work bringing food to the poor.
My families and friends are willing to help fundraise to continue to have this shelter. Please, for all the children that have no homes and the adults, please consider extending the shelter with respect, power, and place.
Hey, Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, I just wanted to add some comments regarding our community that we serve, the homeless, that they're basically just being housed there. It's more than that. We have a data collection homeless management information system, case manager in effect. As of right now, I have documented that we have placed or been involved in placing, working in a collaborative effort with other agencies to place individuals in other types of housing. The organizations that we work with include Interim, the Housing Resource Center, and other transitional programs, including some of the programs that we operate as part of the Community Homeless Solutions organization. So we just don't sit there and house them, but we look for opportunities, work with other agencies to try to find housing that's a little more long-term, so they can stabilize and secure employment and move on with their life. Thank you.
Laura.
Yes, I want to add a couple of things. I know that some comments were made about why these families in the warming shelter. I'd like to stress that families have come in and actually left our program to other housing programs. So the agency and working with the HRC and social services to help, especially the families, come into programs like ours. Single men, single women, we've actually accepted people into our women transition program, men in transition. So as you've heard, for those that have not heard, we adapt. So there's an assessment that is done for these individuals so that through countywide we can find available beds. So the comment that was made earlier was inaccurate. So I just want to make sure for the Board of Supervisors and for everyone here and on the record is that we are working with these families to help place. We would love to place them quicker and sooner so that they wouldn't be living in the warming shelter. That's not an ideal place. Shelter for HUD and for the federal government is not a place to have families or individuals. So we're doing everything we can within our own availabilities, within our own programs and other housing homeless programs to house these individuals. So we are working on that. I want to make sure that supervisors feel comfortable, all supervisors here feel comfortable that we are working diligently to house individuals in the warming shelter.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Danny Snows. I'm a resident here in Salinas. Currently staying at the warming shelter for about a month and a half with our 3 children. We went from our 3-bedroom apartment, 2 cars, down to 1 car and being at the warming shelter. Something we never thought would happen, but it has. We've been through a lot. The kids have been teased at school for it, but the staff there at the warming shelter has made them feel wanted, safe. It's a place for them to just relax at the end of the day. It's not a whole lot that they have right now, but it's theirs at least for that day. So all we ask is that at least the time does get extended for what it is. A lot of families do depend on it to be able to try to get back on their feet. I know we are. It has helped tremendously. I know to a lot of people it may not seem that it does, but to the families it does. It helps us. It may not be a lot of help, but it does. Thank you.
My name is Becky Cisneros, and my kids range from
You pull the microphone down a little bit.
16, 15. My daughter's birthday is on this Thursday, and my other one's 11. And I just want to say that I'm very grateful for the warming shelter, because if it wasn't for it, who knows where my kids and I would be. And I know that it's made us feel safe, you know, and I was very hesitant at first, and when I first got there, it's just like my husband said, we went from 3-bedroom house, 2 cars, and now, just juggling and try to make it every day, and just trying to stay aboard of it. I would be really, really great if you guys can maintain it open so that, families and men and women can get back on their feet. It's not easy out there.
Honorable
Chair,
Council member, I should have taken you first too, as elected official. Sorry, Council.
Members of the supervisors, no problem. Steve McShane, City Councilman, District 3, the area impacted. I first want to say that we have mutual interest in addressing homelessness, and the City of Salinas takes homelessness super seriously. It's our #1 issue, as stated in our goals. I go further to just thank the many partners. Elliot, you've been very passionate. To the operator, certainly Community Homeless Solutions is not to be criticized for running a bad shelter. Clean, well protected, well run, no doubt about it. But I stand here and I say this very confidently on behalf of the City Council to say that we really oppose this move. This is not the right move. This came as a surprise. To some of the supervisors, I think even the comment made by Supervisor Parker, there hasn't even been the chance for a full financial analysis of this proposal. It seems like this got thrown on the agenda with very little notice. I only heard about it 2 days ago. And there's a lot of people that I know that would be here to pledge themselves to work toward a mutually beneficial solution. To the chair's comments, to the comments made by our Director of Social Services, I think that this would signal an interference in our ability to work together towards solutions in homelessness. Homelessness is a county-wide challenge. It's not just the City of Salinas, it's not just the County of Monterey, it's county-wide, and we're the only city that's really stepped up, spending millions. Originally, the idea of a shelter was a winter solution for foul weather. Last year, true, we worked with providers to offer additional opportunity, given the additional need. I pledge to say we do that again. Supervisor Adams' idea that we postpone this a month, even though it does present some uncertainty to the operator and to their staff, at the end of the day, that would be a better solution that would allow us to work together. I mean, really, to the public and everybody else watching, this is a great example of we knew this deadline was coming. And here we are, a few days before government shutdown, and we're scrambling. This is not how we should operate. I challenge the chair to set up a subcommittee, get the city involved in this issue so that we can come to a mutually agreeable location. Merchants, business owners, residents stand united. The temporary shelter represents the wrong move. So I hope that you'll look at other solutions. To the kids, the 12 kids and the 6 families, I stand personally prepared to help in addressing their needs, and would just urge the supervisors to delay this action and work with the city rather than against it. You gain us as a stronger partner, no doubt about it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexa Johnson. I'm the program manager at Housing Resource Center here in Salinas. I want to first off say that I'm not going to pretend to understand the financial needs and just the overall structure it takes to keep a temporary shelter in place. And I do want to thank the county and the city of Salinas for even giving us the ability to have it where we have it now. I do, though, want to kind of shed light on the positive attributes that the Warming Shelter has given to our families personally. I help oversee a little under 80 homeless families through the CalWorks program. And when we do our initial intake, our first question is always, do you have any family you can stay with? Is there something that we can do to keep you out of the shelter and with a supportive network? The reality is a lot of these families have parents who are on Section 8 vouchers, who are in one-bedroom units, and actually by having the family stay there, they risk their family being evicted from their own housing. So from there, we ask, do you have your own car? Can you do the Monterey County pilot safe parking program? Well, they don't have their own car. They borrow cars from friends, they take the bus, or they walk. So then our next option is, let's see if we can get you a hotel stay. You do have the means for that, it's in our contract, let's see if we can find it. Even more so recently, we found that hotels don't want to take any families that even appear homeless. It's not something that we advertise when we try to put them in hotels, but when they hear Housing Resource Center, they know what we're about, they know its influence on the community, and they choose to reject housing, even temporarily, our clients in their hotels. So the warming shelter has been a fantastic alternative for us, even though it breaks my heart to have some of our families in the warming shelter. It makes me feel a lot better than knowing that those families would be sleeping in their car on a random street or sleeping outside. It's proven to be a very positive influence on our families, and it's been a great way to give them shelter while they look for housing actively. So thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Catherine Turney with the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers. A couple things. I support the extension, the proposal for extension. I understand what the challenges it serves up to you and to the city of Salinas. But the truth of the matter is, we must focus on long-term solutions. But I think we're all smart enough to do more than one thing at one time. It is going to, in the best of situations, it is going to take time to generate and implement a long-term permanent solution. So the question is, what do we do till then, right? I can't upstage those two little girls because they basically told you, how it is. I hope that this challenge does not drive a wedge between the county and the city, because again, I hope that everyone in this community understands the importance of this issue, and we should not be looking at wedge issues. We should work through this. The County of Monterey, the City of Salinas, all the jurisdictions within are not in isolation. The entire country is dealing with this issue. And how we respond to it proactively, compassionately, and with a human heart will really carry throughout the decades to come. And lastly, I do want to say that the shelter does not operate in isolation. It is part of coordinated entry. It collects homeless management information system data. It is integrally connected to the service provider network. So people are going into that shelter, going out of that shelter, and being housed in other programs through the systems that are in place right now. So again, I want to thank you for considering it. I get that it's a huge challenge, but it's not going to go away. We have got to deal with it. Thank you.
I'm not here as an elected official. I'm here as a teacher of students who are homeless. And I don't usually dilute my advocacy, but homelessness has become an issue for me when I see people who come to me and say, Mr. Maris, I don't know where I'm going to live. This is the only place that's safe for me, that's away from the drug-infested areas of the community. This is the only safe environment for my children. We need more transitional housing, and that's something that we need to talk about, and I'm willing to sit with any of you. This shelter is safe for children. It's away from 290s. It's away from drugs. We need to stop listening to the NIMBYs in our community and make decisions for the children who are less fortunate. They have the most need right now, and for people who've worked with the United Way, let's not forget the mission and the vision, which is to engage the community and focus resources to improve lives in Monterey County. So I urge you to make the right decision and not put our kids out on the street. This shouldn't be a North Salinas, South Salinas issue. This should be an issue about creating, about meeting the physiological needs of children and families and their safety needs. I don't need to tell any of you about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But the people that are throwing dirty stuff in the downtown area are not the people I met last night at the warming shelter and talked to. I met beautiful families who are just having a hard time. And I'm here to urge you to do the right thing and keep kids off the street. Thank you.
Now we're at the concerned resident, Salinas. I've been listening, and I think a couple key points are kind of missing. The backdrop to this is obviously really decades in the making, and we had a recent study on our farm worker housing situation come out recently, and one of the key findings was that just as early as 2013, there was just about 200 to 240 H-2A workers in our region. That last year there was over 4,000. Where are they living? They're living in motels, they're living in our apartments, and they're critical to our economy. So something's got to give. And we're working with, I know the county is working with growers and others are trying to make that happen. That's part of the longer term solution. We have unprecedented challenges. This is a new reality. And part of the new reality requires some, unfortunate, some new Band-Aids, if you will, but they're important. And that's why we have to move forward with this extension. We have to be nimble and strategic and try to use our resources carefully. I also want to make sure that our financial analysis takes into regard, what if we don't do it? What if we don't do it? Over 300 people were served recently, this past year. When you think about the cost of 300 people to jails, to emergency rooms, to our court system, on average it costs about $100,000 per person when people hit rock bottom and are on the streets. You multiply that by 300, that's $30 million. I think that this down payment on a temporary shelter while we get our act together for a permanent fix is the only solution. And to those folks that don't have the political wherewithal to see that, well, I hope that they can listen to Carissa and Paula. We need to do something. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Supervisors. Just one comment that I think needs to be clear. It's the big issue is that what would happen if this warming shelter disappears? The homeless is still going to exist. Haven't been raised in the Salinas Valley and haven't been raised in Old Town, what I call Old Town Salinas. I think that's the bigger issue. I understand the concerns of the business community, but the solution is not getting rid of a warming shelter. It's because the issue will still be there if that disappears. What that will bring is more heartache and more pain in a community that's already feeling it. The issue of homelessness cuts into a lot of the issues that the Board of Supervisors is trying to address around housing, around economics, around class, around race. And so I would like to remind the Board of Supervisors of that. Thank you.
I am labeled as a social economic displacement. And I have been trying to find housing for 2 years now. And if it wasn't for Jesse and his well-run facility, sure there's things that could be upgraded and improved. I would be, and I have slept on the street. And it is difficult to sleep on the sidewalk, as you stated. But I have been placed there. And I feel that there are foundations that you could reach for the economic financing. They need the tax write-off. And I feel that these foundations that support other services need to be addressed because they need the tax write-off as well. And that's one way to find funding and find it fast because taxes are coming up. So I want to thank the board for having Jesse monitor, and he does a very good job. He keeps the drugs out, he keeps the violence out, and men like Jesse and this Mr. Elliott and you board of directors need to rethink about how someone in my class is displaced, is wanting to move forward, and is very grateful for having this facility for me today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Juliet Loder and I am 7 years old. I have been helping at the shelter since I was 4, and I heard that the shelter was not open all year, and I would like it to stay open because homeless. I do not want the homeless to sleep on the streets because they will Shelter.
Hi, I'm Wes White, Salinas resident, community enthusiast, also the president of the Salinas Homeless Shelter, Miami County as well. We've had thoughts before. So I kind of feel like a year ago, you know, we busted this shelter, we broke a lot of rules, got red tagged, but we saved lives. You know, and now it looks like, am I going to have to do this again? You know, and I feel frustrated because I feel like both the city and the county are working together to suffocate this thing and kill it. Well, you know, I don't want to have to pay the whole thing by myself, so I guess I'll just have to let it go. And it just seems, it's frustrating because we're not treating people like people. And that's what really bothers me. A year ago, it seemed like we're going to use the temporary shelter in place of when we get the permanent shelter. Now it sounds like we're not even working on a permanent shelter at all. And we also are looking at last minute saving the temporary shelter. So it seems like we're not interested in actually collaborating or doing things because everything's money and discrimination is how we treat people. Everyone in this shelter lives near here, and most people live on the south side. They're not going to go all the way to the Natividad Road. I mean, unless you're just trying to transplant them, but you got to realize that this is their community. The south side proper is their community. This side of the railroad tracks. Sorry, guess what else? If you don't want people defecating, why don't you open up the bathrooms? No 24-hour bathroom anywhere, and yet we're going to penalize people because we make it impossible for them to follow the rules. It's ridiculous. People run circles just so you can make people lose on purpose. It's frustrating, and I hate it. We've got to boycott money because we don't need money. In fact, you should just leave it right here the whole time until you actually open up that thing, because that's the only thing that's going to bother these businesses enough to put in some money and make it happen. This is a community issue. This isn't a county or city or whatever. It's all of us. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to do anything about it but just go away, fall off the face of the earth because I'm not paying for it. And that's wrong. It needs to stay right here the whole time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Okay, we're going to bring this back to the first public comments. Bring this back to the board. I just wanted to take an opportunity, though, because people have kept asking, what have we done over the last 6 or 7 months? We've done a lot. Not enough. We hope we had more resources. Oh, Mr. Roberts, you want to speak first?
No.
Oh, okay. But we've done a lot. Well, if we had more resources, which money's coming from the state, I think we could do a lot more. Some of that money's tied up. Some of the state agencies have to do the regulations and release the money. But we want to tee some things up so we could do a lot more here in Monterey County. But what have we done? Since the last shelter closed, we looked at a whole bunch of sites, city, the county, Salinas City Center, Chamber of Commerce, the homeless providers. We went looking on a tour, looking at all sites. So when people challenge me, I said, I'll tell you what I've done. And I want other council members who challenge me to also say what have they done. But we looked at all these sites. We opened the first parking program in the history of this county. We opened this temporary site after much difficulty where we came to an agreement with the city. Our county staff went to the Mayor's Association and even proposed forming some kind of task force, the city managers and our CAO's office, to work together on homelessness, because that's going to help create intergovernmental cooperation. So when we keep talking about why isn't the Peninsula or South County, the other cities working together, well, we need to create these mechanisms where we could help facilitate greater discussions and collaboration. But unfortunately, that idea wasn't embraced as we had hoped. But we also reconstituted the Continuum of Care, the Leaving Home Leadership Council. So we brought in some more elected officials, some more mayors, brought some more stakeholders, and we're also doing a lot of work there. But I took over as a co-chair of that since January, so it's been a few months. But we're trying to reshape and reorganize coalitions and groups coming together so we can carry out more work. This morning we had our 2-3-year affordable housing action plan that we're approving. So the county's making that a priority to build more housing, get more people, provide more housing opportunities. We created the first ever ad hoc committee on farm worker housing, so we create some more affordable housing. And it should be noted that just last March and last month, the city and the county unanimously approved a concept for a permanent shelter for a site. I want to commend the city staff, Anastasia, who's really been a champion on the city, but really brought an original concept and elevated it to another level to maximize the limited space we have in Monterey County to do more for a homeless population by adding that transitional housing component. those were all things that were done. So it's not everything we wanted, but we're doing a lot of steps in the right direction. I did want to point out that this is a crisis that every city government, every city county is dealing with. Even though the state passed all this legislation, created some new monies for local governments, it's still the #1 priority right now in Sacramento and for the governor. We were just at the CSAC conference last week. It was one of the top 3 issues being talked about among county supervisors and the governor's office. On the idea about just approving another month extension, we're going to be back here at the end of June having the same conversation. I do think it's more prudent to look at a small extension, which is 5 months. It's still a narrow window of time, but it does provide that opportunity and that perfect time frame for those who want to see this shelter moved elsewhere, help us raise the money. And like I said, other folks haven't provided a dime yet, but if this could be a partnership with the private sector, a public-private partnership, and an ongoing partnership with the city and the county, we can hopefully move within this 5 months. We could get this set up elsewhere and moved. But just like in my meeting last week that we had with our business partners, I was very frank, and I was saying, and I hope that when they say cleanup, it doesn't mean just removing the poor, the homeless out of the downtown, the old town, but because and it's yet to be seen, even if we move this shelter to Natividad, it's yet to be seen whether everybody who's utilizing it today would utilize it at this new location. Because everyone knows that wherever you have a financial hub, that's a draw. You still have a large homeless community just across the way in Chinatown. Those folks are still going to be there. Those services are still going to be there. So I just want to be, when we're having this conversation out here in public, we should just be frank that just moving this shelter is not going to deal with the wide range of homelessness issues in Monterey County. And I think we should just acknowledge that's a very real issue for us. Otherwise, I just wanted to point out that I wanted to make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation for the 5-month period. I do, being a son of a minister and a son of a Sunday school teacher, I grew up with values about doing God's work. And I commend everybody who serves our poor and our homeless, that this is God's work. Extending the shelter for another 5 months is God's work, because all these people are God's children. And I think that it's our responsibility as elected officials to care for them, show compassion and respect, as our young speaker spoke about very compellingly, that this is something that's our obligation to take care of our most vulnerable residents. And I want to thank everybody who came today from all points of view, because this conversation was much more civil and respectful than the conversation we had at that one Tamsi meeting where they decided to close the shelter. So I commend everybody for being respectful and sharing your comments and perspectives today. But I do think this is a compromise of 5 months. Let's work hard. Now the challenge is before us. I did speak to Dan Baldwin. Hopefully our private partners could help us raise a significant amount of money, so as soon as we get it, we can start putting those dollars and doing the proper preparations before then. If we're able to move it, if we raise the money and we move it before 5 months, this will allow us to do it. If we can do it in 3, the contract with the service providers will then just switch to the new site, and we don't have to be locked into this location. So this plan gives us that opportunity and gives the opportunity to move these services and move to the location. It also creates the incentive for other stakeholders to step up, help us raise the money to make this a reality for our residents.
Wasteful spending.
Yeah.
So is there a second?
No.
Suarez in a second. Supervisor Phillips.
Ken, I'd like to just have our say too.
Yes, sir, of course.
People seem to forget that the city and the county were really crosswise about what we were going to do about this. And it was on a Saturday morning when I met with the mayor, and we sat down and had coffee and tried to figure out a way to come together and do this. We walked down to that shelter where the public defender's office is, and him and Jim P. and I said, if we can get this open and we have it for a warming shelter, would that work for the city? And the mayor and I agreed on that. He said, I can sell that to our downtown people if it's strictly a warming shelter, and that was the agreement. So I feel a little bit about credibility, my credibility and our credibility when we kind of change it. But, frankly, I think we're looking at it from a short-sighted standpoint. And I know it's every time you take and you look about closing services, that's a difficulty. But I think we're looking at it, instead of looking at what we can do for a longer range solution, a year-round shelter rather than this one. And it's pretty clear, if we do this, I think we're just going to be sitting there and not working on a longer range solution, because this will go into October, the city of Salinas will pull back, and I don't think we'll get the support that we need. We have looked, I've been out there several times now at 855 Laurel, and I think we have to look at, if we took the money, we're talking about $385,000. If you took that, and I think you can't just, even at this stage, I think you got to keep it open a month to allow social services to find a place for these kids, especially. You kept it open for a month, and you immediately declared an emergency because of the problem with the homeless, and you move forward on East Laurel. It's 3+ acres. We're talking about a long-range solution of a $50 to $60 million building. But there's enough land there where you can grade off a site and you bring in a modular. And the site is ideal for that. It's ready for development. There's no demolition cost. It's county-owned. You have water, sewer, and electric that's available. And a modular unit could be moved in quickly, because I did one. We built one, and you leveled it off. And you can do that in 2 months to level it off and get the site ready and bring the modular in. And if you take the $325,000 that we would be saving, and if you move the modular out of across from the post office, and now you treat jurors the way we should treat them and have juror parking there, then you're saving another $225,000 a year that can go towards that. So already you have $500,000 towards that. And if you move and everybody works together to move it, and the city says they'll waive all impact fees and everything else to do it, and the city's working with us and make a monetary commitment, which I think they will. And I already have a commitment from Dan Baldwin that he will form a capital campaign to help raise the rest of the money that we need for that. I think we use the money to do it so we have a permanent temporary shelter, because I don't think it's right to have a shelter to provide services where it's a warming shelter and then it closes, because we're going to face this every single time. And so I think we put our resources where we need them, and I think we can have that open in 4 months. But if we use the money here and we keep it here until October, it becomes a permanent shelter, and all the enthusiasm that we can have for developing that. If I didn't have this job and they let me go and do this, I could have this done in 4 months, that it would be up and running.
And just a point of clarification, sorry, Scott, I think there was a savings on the jury duty shuttle. It wouldn't be a savings for the county. I think that's a cost that's paid by the Superior Court.
No, they pay $50,000 is all they pay toward. The rest of it we pay.
Is that a motion, Supervisor Phillips?
There's a motion on the floor, but I think it's right to move
Could I make a
forward
substitute
with our
motion?
partners, so we're not leaving our partners aside. And I'm
Second
looking
first.
at a permanent solution. I know when we get it there, it'll be there at least 3 or 4 years, and even when we bring the permanent building in and build it, this will still be a meeting place and other things where we can provide services. But I think rather than having a warming shelter, we need a place where people can come and get services. And we already have a commitment from the city that the church will start delivering the meals there. Now, they bring up a question. Will some people not get there? And I think we'll provide bus service, especially during the winter time, to bus people out there. That's something that I think we'll have to do.
I'd like to make a substitute motion. And I'd like to move that we fund the current downtown shelter for another till June 30th. $76,842 coming from cannabis. And I would like to add that we have formed together then a short-term committee comprising the mayor of Salinas, Supervisor Phillips, perhaps moving him up the chain, Steve McShane, and either myself or Supervisor Parker. I believe that, and then probably somebody like Mr. Armenta, to do virtually to pursue other options very similar to what Supervisor Phillips has said. And I want to just let you know how much I understand the critical seriousness of this issue. There are more than 8,000 homeless children in the school districts in Monterey County. This is not just a Salinas problem. This is a problem that affects the entire county, and it hits all of the other counties around us. So if we don't have a sense of urgency by having just essentially 32 days, or however many it is until June 30th, to come up with some kind of a plan, I believe, as Supervisor Phillips had alluded to, it's going to be another 5 months, and then it's going to be another year, and we still wouldn't have accomplished anything. So my motion is that we fund the existing shelter till June 30th, that we pull together the task force that I mentioned, and that we come back at June 30th with a plan that is something that we can really move forward on. Is there anybody willing to second that?
Motion dies for
Second.
Is there a second now? Okay, now we'll open up for discussion. Supervisor Salinas.
Mr. Chair, on this motion, I certainly can't support it. I don't think what Supervisor Phillips suggested or recommended is exclusive of doing what your motion that I seconded will attain. I mean, let's declare an emergency if needed. This is so critical an issue. If we have to vote, the city and the county declare an issue, and this is not about notice. This issue came right now because we need to make a decision on this. It goes beyond that. To me, it's about the values of this city and of this county. This is what we're talking about. Is it better to have the children out sleeping on the streets? That would be a great image for the city of Salinas and for this county in this day of social media. So let's do what everybody's saying here. Let's strengthen the city-county partnership. Let's develop a temporary shelter before we close this warming shelter, and let's start looking at the permanent shelter. There's been some commitments made by Community Foundation and others, but I haven't seen the money coming forward. When does it come forward? These children need a place to sleep tonight, not tomorrow, not a year from now, not at the end of June. So let's get real about this. I mean, to me, I'm leaving here, but I hope this board has the tenacity and the will and the commitment to push this county forward. Let's start making some solutions come about. That what they're asking here is not that much, folks. And the downtown folks and the city folks, come on, give me a break. You've known about this also. Why haven't you called me? I'm not on that committee, but why don't you call me also so that I can engage? And I would be the first to push our county organization, and hopefully the city leaders would do the same for the city folks, so that we can get some resolution to this. And so ask yourselves tonight, where will the children go tonight if we don't do something about this? The ideal warming shelter is not the ideal solution, as Mr. Armenta said, but they're working with it. The folks that use it have come and commented about the service that they're getting there and how they appreciate it. So I would suggest that we vote on the motion to extend this, and that we continue working hard on this. This is not an easy solution. Like Heather truly said, this is a national crisis. And the sooner we start saying, in this downtown, we're going to support this warming shelter, and let's keep working on the next temporary shelter and then the permanent shelter. That's how we indicate what the values of this community are about.
Thank you, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm of many minds on this. I think it is important that we continue to work with the city of Salinas to find solutions. My concern is that the current motion on the floor is trying to create a sense of urgency. I don't think it's the county that needs a sense of urgency, and I do not want to see some of our most vulnerable population tossed out on the street while we have a discussion about potential other locations. I'm completely open to another location, but by Supervisor Phillips' own admission, even if we move rapidly on creating a pad at 855 East Laurel, it's going to take 2 to 4 months to get a shelter there. Let's not just be throwing these folks out on the street while we figure out a solution that the city of Salinas might like better. And then, an argument against that, to me, is if the Community Foundation wants to raise money, if I were a donor to the community foundation, why would I want to give money to a temporary, expensive solution? I'd rather give my money for the permanent, really high-quality solution that we're working on. So I would hope the community foundation would put that, whatever money they think they might want to put into the temporary location, put that and, 2 to 5 times more into the permanent solution. I mean, I think we've got a huge problem here. And I think it's not perfect, but I think of all of the options before us, the best is to continue the current services in the current location. If we can find a better place that makes more people happier, all the better. But in the meantime, we need a place for these people to be where they can have some safety, some dignity, and some shelter. And then, also, the county can't be expected to carry the expense of these solutions all by ourselves, by the county taxpayers alone. We've got to figure out how to come together, not just with the city of Salinas, but definitely with the city of Salinas, but with every city in this county to respond to this very fundamental set of needs of our residences. As Ms. Ramirez said, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. This is the ultimately just most basic. So I think it's important for us to not have people who have enough stresses in their lives not to contribute more stress by having. I was open to the end of June idea, but I think that creates uncertainty and stress in people who already have enough of that in their lives. So I think really making that commitment to continue the services, whether at this location or some other one, is absolutely fundamental to who we are and how we need to be thinking about these short-term solutions while we work on the longer-term ones.
I want to speak to the substitute motion, just because I think I'm in agreement with Supervisor Salinas and Parker, because I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We've been doing a lot of the work already. Everybody who's been interested has been coming to meetings, countless meetings, and been coming to the leadership council. We've been searching for all types of sites. We've had a meeting last week with our business partners, and we have a site. We have 2 potential sites. And the only difference on 1220 is that we have a potential developer who wants to perhaps help us generate some money there that we can then put to the 855 shelter site. And so those who want to be involved had an opportunity to get involved, and some we haven't seen do that. I do want to commend Mayor Gunter and his staff, because they have been putting the time. They've gone to all the meetings, and they know we're out there trying to find solutions where there's not a lot of easy answers. And I have a lot of respect for his commitment to this community. But under the original motion, it's 5 months, as originally stated. There's a flexibility to then move it to 855 as soon as we raise the money. And I hope too that now the challenge is on everybody. Let's raise the money, help us, because we can't do it alone. We're doing this original motion is all alone. It's us using our discretionary dollars once again, like we did last year. But this original motion allows us to be able to move it as soon as we're able to raise the money. Let's move it to 855 as soon as we get the money generated and get the construction done over there and the modular in place. We're able to do that. We also do have a permanent site. As we all know, it's going to take at least 2-3 years to get the financing. And just like with the Mid-Peninsula project that's going to break ground this year in Chinatown, 90 units, as Mayor Gunter pointed out, that took 2-3 cycles. We were denied the tax credits. I think it was on the 3rd try that we got the tax credit that had the funding all come together, and now we're going to break ground, and the community's going to see an important milestone of a major construction project that's going to revitalize Chinatown. Half those units are going to be for homeless residents. We're going to have the county's going to provide caseworkers there. That's another thing that's going to be something to be proud of as well. So I can't support this substitute motion. I hope we can go back and vote on the original motion. CEO Bond.
Chair, if I could just ask if you would consider adding to that motion that you would convene a joint city-county and a meeting with also the business leaders.
Substitute motion first.
Okay.
Okay. Well, We'll entertain the substitute motion. Let's take up the substitute motion first. There was a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No. Wait, let's do aye first.
Aye.
Okay, so there's 2 ayes. All those against? No. Motion fails 2 to 3. Now we'll go back to the original motion, which is to support staff recommendation. And we can agree, you want to elaborate on
Thank
the
you.
amendment?
Just wanted to suggest perhaps that as part of that motion that you ask that you convene a board between members of your board, the City of Salinas, and members of the Downtown Business Leadership Group and identify a 60-day fast-track plan to come back here with alternatives and present proposals to your board.
I'm going to add that a friendly amendment, but also make sure we include the input of our providers and Department of Social Services as well.
Can you include a homeless advocate on that too, please?
Because I think that would help us give a message of wanting to move this further along sooner rather than later. I agree to that. So add that friendly amendment, let's go with that. County Council?
Just be aware, it's probably a Brown Act covered committee that you're creating. Just be aware.
Public meeting.
Be informed of those meetings and
That's how we work, make it work, yeah. Conformity with all laws. Okay, there's been, we added friendly amendment. Mr. Robbins.
Just did we identify the financing option? I think it's staff recommendation from cannabis revenue for current year and next year? Or do we use contingencies in the current year and cannabis revenue?
Contingencies for this year and cannabis for next, is what was in the.
There you go. Let's do that. If it's okay with the second contingencies and then with cannabis for next fiscal year. Okay? Motion is clarified, and then we'll vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? So motion carries 3-2.
The financing needs a forfeit, so there's forfeit for the financing.
Okay.
For this. So you're out.
I wish I felt differently, but I'm just afraid it's going to be just as it's been since we were up here the last time. We sit here and we talk and we talk and we talk, and nothing gets done. And I felt like the sense of urgency with having it be a shorter term period of time would certainly make us move towards something that would be real. And that's why I couldn't support the second motion. And I'm struggling over having the funding all come out of the cannabis revenue. We said we weren't going to do that. And we're pushing it out of the budgeting cycle. I could support everything if we did cannabis for the $76,842, and then if we look at the general fund if we put the rest of the money back up against the other budgeting constraints that we have for 18-19.
Ms. McKee.
So it looks like you have an item here moving funds right now from contingency or elsewhere, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if the D funds through the budget and sub D there coming from cannabis, that would be done through the regular budgeting process for the next fiscal year?
You could do that. I mean, the challenge is if it does not get funded, then that means an additional cut to the operations department of social services.
Supervisor Phillips?
I want to just say for the record that I think the program has been well-run and it's had limited problems. I voted against it, but it's the will of the board. I'll modify my vote for the financial issue of it. I don't want to be the obstinate one that stands in the way.
You calling me names?
So you can split up the vote if you wanted by subcategories there, A, B, C, or D.
So we'll take a vote
On the financing.
And financing. And Supervisor Phillips, I want to thank you for that. And our commitment is to work with our partners. And as soon as I think we can raise the money to move it, that's my commitment to do it as soon as possible. This would just give us that window. If we could do it 2-3 months, we'd like to see that. You know, my commitment is to work hard with you to make sure that happens as soon as possible. So,
Yeah, yes.
So do we rescind
Yeah,
the motion?
just a reconsideration of the previous
Do
vote.
a reconsideration of the previous?
Motion for reconsideration, basically.
Yeah,
Move reconsideration.
Second. Okay, motion for reconsideration is moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those against?
No.
4-1. Okay, now we're back for revote on the original motion. All those in favor? Aye. All those against?
No.
So motion carries 4-1.